Hello and welcome to episode 39 of Off the Bandstand. My name is Christian Wiggs. I am your host. Today's episode is David Young, a trumpet player who wears many different hats, including composer, lyricist, bandleader, producer, father, and for me, mentor. David has been present on multiple different scenes, such as Chicago, where he came up, New York City, Austin, where I met him, and now currently Los Angeles. And he has worked with, recorded, or performed with notable artists such as Lauryn Hill and the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic. In this episode, we talk about creating, living, and working in a positive and mindful headspace. We also talk about the evolution of his musical projects and not being limited by convention or standards or other people's, kind of interpretations of what we should be working on. And also a plagued church gig that had a radio silent congregation. So moving over to the releases of the week, the first one is David's freshman record that he put out on Big Chicago Records in 2001. It's called Appassionata, and it features one of my favorite ballads of all time, which is the second track. It's called When I Knew Emily. And we talk a bit in this episode about this record and how every song played some significance to people or events in his life. And also that every song had lyrics written to them additionally, although they weren't recorded. So who knows, we may look forward to having those see the light of day at some point in the future. If you want to support this release directly, you can go over to his website, David Young Presents, and just shoot him a message in the contact box and see if you can purchase a digital download or if he might still have some CDs available back from 20 years ago. Crazy to think that 2001 was 20 years ago. And then also you can go follow him on Instagram to keep up with all the new things that he's doing and all the new projects he's putting out. And that's on Instagram at David Young Official. So as always, we have it put down here for easy access. And then moving on to the other release of the week comes from Stephen Feifke and his big band. This is his long-awaited big band record that is coming out tomorrow, Friday, April 9th. And this record features musicians such as Alexa Tarantino, Lucas Pino, Benny Benack III, Dan Chmielinski, Brian Carter, and Joe Perry, among other very incredible musicians. A lot of those names should sound familiar as veteran members of this show, or at least people that we've plugged in the releases of the week. This record also features works from Stephen's monthly residency with the big band over at the Django in New York City before the pandemic shut everything down. And they are going to be having an album release celebration tomorrow night that you can stream on YouTube. That's going to be at 5:15 Eastern Standard Time. So tune into that. I know it's going to be really fascinating to hear everything that Stephen has to say and just to celebrate separate but together the release of this new record. It's very, very exciting. So I will be tuning in and I hope you will as well. Another big exciting thing is if you pre-order the CD today, you'll get a free signed copy of or if you pre-order the actual physical CD today, you'll get a free signed copy of his first record, which is called Peace and Time. That's with his septet that we plugged a few weeks back and also talked about in Stephen's episode back in, episode 26, 27, something like that. So also, if you want to support that release directly, you can go over to StephenFeifkemusic.com. He's got sheet music from this record and all of them before, and physical copies, digital downloads, just a myriad of different things, fun things that you can go and find on his store and on his website. So go check that out at StephenFeifkemusic.com. And then on Instagram at Stephen Feifke, you can keep up with all the daily posts and everything that he's keeping up with. So now moving on to the Monk shows of the week. Monk's Jazz Club is a pop-up jazz club turned brick and mortar at a beautiful new location. He was over at East Austin Piano Shop on East 6th, and now he's moved over to Pedernales Station, this beautiful red brick room that just is hosting some incredible live streams that are on par with the quality of stuff all around the country. It's crazy to think we have it here in our own backyard, going back to an Adrian Ruiz thing, saying an embarrassment of riches that we have here in the Austin scene. Definitely something to take note of, and this week's shows are no exception. The first one we have is tonight, April 8th. That's Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's the Brian Donahoe Quartet. I'm going to be tuning into that so I can hear Brian. Then on this Sunday, April 11th, we're going to have Chris Loveland and Friends. It's his senior recital for his work, his undergraduate degree Society over at the University of Texas at Austin at Butler School of Music. So tune into that on Sunday at 7:30 as well. And then next Tuesday is going to be the Mitch Watkins Quartet. That's April 13th, Tuesday. That is one of the Austin Jazz Society Project Safety Net shows. Again, Project Safety Net is the initiative that was started by Austin Jazz Society to make sure to take care of the most vulnerable jazz musicians here in the Austin city limits, getting them onto the other side of the pandemic so that way they don't get swallowed by bills, and we're able to keep them afloat so that way they can get on the other side unscathed. So if you would like to make a donation to that, you can go over to the show and they'll have links to that, or you can just go to austinjazzsociety.org and make a tax-deductible donation through their website. And then that's it. That's all the plugs that we have for this week. Make sure to check out David Young's record, not only Appassionata, but his other ones like Silverback and another project I hadn't heard called Detroit City that they have called The Genesis. And then his other just multiple different things that he's recorded on. Go over to his website, check that out. Check out Stephen Feifke's new record. I've been looking forward to that for months now, and all of the Monk shows as well. But for now, please enjoy episode 39, David Young, my mentor. This is Off the Bandstand.
Good to catch up. Yeah, I mean, it's been I've been well, and glad to come out of 2020 into 2021. You know, it's like it's a really fascinating time to be alive. I think, especially as a creative person, there's been no shortage of I feel like stimulus to write about, to think about, especially as creatives and performers like you and I. Time to reflect, being away from, our fan bases and audiences and stages, and being away from each other. But now, it's interesting, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I don't want to beat that dead horse too much,
sure, because
who hasn't been talking about only the pandemic, most recently. But I've written a lot of cool music in the past year. And just done a bunch of things I wouldn't normally have taken the time to do ever in life.
Okay.
Learning how to fish. Okay. Camping and strange things like this, which you see just oh, where's David? He's camping? That doesn't, that wouldn't necessarily be 2018 David, or fishing, sure. He's been fishing for 5 days in a row. It's sure. Really weird, but, during, a time like this, it's been cool to sort of bring on new patterns and rhythms in life. And because you got to fill that void, you got to fill that void of the absence that was there, I think, in the last year.
Do you feel like you are doing more of those things that are kind of, because when I think camping, fishing, I mean, I never went hunting as a kid, even though I grew up in Texas, that's a very popular thing to do here.
That's what you do there.
But right. But do you feel like that is kind of tied more directly with the fact that you have kids now, and that's more of a family centric thing?
It's gotta be. It has to have, it has to be. I didn't necessarily go fishing with my dad when I was a kid, because we were we would sit around and I don't know, and listen to the new Grover Washington record together, and we'd go check out jazz clubs in the city. We were city cats. And but I feel as a parent, this past year was a challenge where it's what sort of things can I do that are socially distanced, that are family friendly, that'll help to occupy my kids' time and also my own mental space, because they weren't in school. So, what can we do? What's around us? And I think it was really getting creative with the environment around us, and say, where's the low hanging fruit? What's here right in front of me that that I'm missing. Like, it's
Mm.
like we don't have to go to, an amusement park. It don't, like or library or whatever. It's like, oh, you know what? Let's get some rods and go fishing, or
Yeah.
let's get a tent and pitch it in the backyard and go camping.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely tied to the fact that you know that I have kids. I think like
Mm-hmm.
being a parent, like finding all these cool things to do, like what would be neat to do for a kid, where we could like enjoy nature and enjoy being outdoors, because there was so much time spent inside and
Mm-hmm.
isolated, and like what can I do to still preserve that sense of majesty about the world,
Mm.
not only for them but for myself too, and remind myself
Right.
like like of all the grandeur that's around us. But if you spend your whole time, like with me, like I spend so long, it's like concentrating on the career and like hustling and like it's like music. I've got blinders on, and sometimes it's good to like take off the blinders and say, oh wait, like look around me, like I'm running on this racetrack, but it's really nicely manicured lawn. Like it's a
Yeah.
really nice race. There are flowers over there, petunias. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Man, you're talking to exactly the right person. I'm in the middle of writing 4 records that will all work together, that follow like a very kind of through narrative, and they do kind of follow. This is the first time I'm talking, I guess, publicly about it, but it follows kind of um, each stage of my life thus far in 4 parts, and the fourth one, which I'm like is the least written, but mostly just because that's what is unfolding now, is much more focused on like positivity, whereas the second and third one, well, I should say the first and third one, are more kind of, I wouldn't say negative, but they're focusing on more heavy material, and so the
Yes.
arrangements are reflecting that. I mean, they're definitely very kind of like shielded in that way, where it's not like inflicting all of the emotional baggage onto the listener. It's using like pre-existing standards and original tunes. But the fourth one, the reason why I haven't decided to write much of it yet is because that's like the positivity, like the sun coming out kind of thing, where I've been trying to internalize a lot of those things as well, where I've been going on runs like in the middle of the night, like midnight, 1 a.m. when everything's super still and you can smell the jasmine. You can see where there was like, I've already talked about this on the show, so I won't, beat the dead horse too much, but where, I live up in the Domain. So in this area, like that's like where the huge hustle and bustle is. Everyone's going to the shops all the time. But it's this crazy like duality of like things can change in an instant. And I think it was like in the daytime, it was more evident during the midst of the pandemic, because everything was closed. But even at night, you see this thing where it's like, whereas this is an entire parking lot full of cars, now it's just emptiness. And you just see, like bugs underneath the lamp, the street lamp or whatever, and you're sort of forced to focus on these kind of elements and these smells, these sounds, these sights, and be a little bit more mindful. So you're talking to exactly the right person, where it's just like, I want to be more involved in what's actually happening now, as opposed to getting caught up of like, because I'm sure you were probably the same way, where we were playing gigs and we weren't even focused. Like, of course we were present in that gig to give our best performance, but we were more focused about, okay, what's coming up this week, or what client have I not quite prepared for enough, or we have a residency through X date, I wonder if they're going to renew. This is stressing me out. And it's just always focused on what is coming next. And I think that's something that you taught me like a lot, was, and not in not in kind of a toxic way. I think I took it to that, but you always were kind of like, yeah, no, I'm definitely not passing that on to you.
Toxic way.
No, I took it into a kind of a toxic way of like, always, never being satisfied, just wanting more and more gigs, and being like, how many possible hours of the day could I potentially be playing, as opposed to just being fine with like 4 or 5 gigs that week. I was like, no, let's try to book 9 or whatever, but you always taught me to like be looking forward to what comes next, and be prepared, because that's how you make it in an industry that is so packed tight with people. I know I've gone on to like 5 different tangents already just off of that one thing, but I do think that that's a really beautiful sentiment of like, let's just take advantage of the moment to be a little bit more present. And then, oh my gosh, amazing how that then feeds, like you were saying, like the stimulating instinct of like writing. Amazing how those experiences and being alone with your thoughts and actually allowing yourself to be vulnerable will influence the music that you have to say and the music you have to write.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing the four, this epic 4 album song cycle that you have going on. I think that's a great thing. And I also like that it's four, like the seasons,
Mm.
Not that you don't have seasons in Texas.
Yeah, no.
Just mosquitoes and not mosquitoes. It's
Well,
mosquitoes and then rain season.
well, it's mosquitoes, rain season, and then an occasional, blizzard that totally shuts us all inside for like 5 days.
Oh, that's right. There was that too. What
Yeah.
a time we've had. What a time we've had, man.
Right. Yeah. Well, man, another thing too that I was going to ask you about is that, and I am going to, I'm going to try to limit my compliments, but I do, when I talk to people, when people ask me about, okay, how'd you get started with music and Austin and like gigging and working on client relationships, I really attribute everything back to you, because I mean, you were the one that gave me my first shot, and then you really kind of took me under your wing and taught me a lot of the things that you knew. And I remember like a very central thing was you said, I'm going to teach you all of the lessons that I had to learn the hard way, so that way you don't have the scars. Like I'll teach them to you the easy way preemptively. But something I always admired was that you were always on the go. You were always just like, what's the next thing? Or like, I'm going to make moves. I'm not even going to be like grounded by anything. I'm just going to do what makes sense in the moment and also take into account like the longevity of these actions. But it was a very responsible kind of calculation. So one day I texted you, I was like, hey man, we should hang out. And you're like, oh yeah, man, I might be back in Texas. I was like, what? And you were like, yeah, I'm in LA now. So what was that? What kind of spurned the move to LA?
Sure, certainly. I mean, I had, when we moved to Texas, we being my wife and my family, um, we had been sort of juggling whether to come to Los Angeles or to go to Texas. We had roots in Texas in that, my in-laws were living there at the time. My
Mm-hmm.
sister-in-law lives there. They have kids at the same age as ours, and I have cousins here in Los Angeles, like in the metropolitan area. But I had really enjoyed the music scene there in Austin. And so once we left Chicago, it was sort of weighing which one to do. Ultimately, my wife landed like an awesome gig there to open up
Mm-hmm.
the bureau for Bloomberg business there, Bloomberg News.
Okay.
So we ended up going to Texas because I really liked it. I didn't want to be anywhere near the snow, coming from the Midwest, nowhere near the snow. But what prompted the move here is that, after I guess a few things, I had wanted to come here for some time, and I had been traveling here. I'd been doing work here and sort of like cultivating, work and opportunities and stuff here in Los Angeles while I was in Texas for the past like year, 2 years that I was there in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to just kind of stay flexible and expand the footprint of my work. And, a good friend of mine, a producer, said, this is the kind of town where if you want to do work here, you have to be here. There's no replacement, no substitute for being here, because so much is immediate. Just like the other day, we were going to have our call the other day.
Right.
And then I got a call saying, hey, we have the studio blocked out. You need to come to this session.
Yeah.
So I just had to go, but that's not the kind of thing where, like, if I were sort of an interloper on the scene and like, I would, like, for instance, when I was in Austin, I'd travel here to Los Angeles and I'd reach out to my contact and say, hey, I'm going to be in town for these 3 days. If you have anything you want to work on, like, no one can do anything with that. Like, it's like, oh, these 3 days. Oh yeah, just happen to have this thing. And I did, there was things, but when you can sort of, when something is prescient, you have to be available to take advantage of the opportunity, and you have to sort of be there. And Los Angeles is a really important hub for the industry, for music, for media, for television, movies, and it's like a big just international port. So we we had been sort of like tossing the idea around because, our time in Texas, I think, was like, I definitely wanted more. I had done, I made so many wonderful relationships, and, like, got to work with, with the most talented people in the world, yourself, all, Brandon, James, all the people that we were involved with, Maldonado, wonderful people, shining stars, it's like, and what I've also understood is that regardless of what city I am living in, like, once you have a bond with, you've made music together and created together, that stays. And I've always really enjoyed creating opportunities for other creatives. And I'm good at that. I like being able to wear the business hat, finesse things to, nothing. No one gets on stage unless something gets sold, or nothing happens. So you gotta sell it first, So I just always had the knack to do that, and I've always enjoyed doing that, So I've always, I've also realized that even if when I do move, same as like with in Chicago, like I have a lot of musicians who I work with there, and like I still do work there, and then we get I can get those guys gigs and like just help them keep on doing that. And look, I mean, not necessarily like they're not life-changing gigs at this point. Maybe someday I will give someone a life-changing gig, or maybe I have, and it's changed their lives for the better, and I didn't even know it, or perhaps for the worse. But
we won't tell. We won't tell anybody. We won't tell.
Yeah, right. We won't tell anybody about this. There's been a handful of those, but so I knew that I'll be, I would travel back to Austin regularly. In 2019, I was back and forth from Los Angeles to Austin a lot with a lot of shows and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I sort of wanted to be in a city that had more diversity, that moved at a bit faster pace. I'm not knocking the pace of Austin necessarily, or in Texas, but, I grew up in Chicago, which is like this is an old metropolitan melting pot, and so those things, that was there. I also, especially for my daughters, I have like my daughters are biracial. I wanted them to grow up in a place where like they could also see, or at least to have the experience of living in a place where they could see, themselves reflected in the community around them, and they could see some of that diversity, so that was also another really important thing. So it was like musical, it was familial. And then also I think it was a point where our kids were old enough so that, everyone was out of diapers. It's, we didn't, not that we didn't require as much of a support network, but my wife and I could sort of like continue to make moves in our careers and do things with a little bit more autonomy than, as opposed to having like little tiny people in diapers. That's just different. Like when it's like that, it's like all hands on deck all the time. You need some help. But I was ready to make the move here and just really commit myself to my work in writing, songwriting, producing, and then just sort of furthering the journey and going to the next step in the journey and seeing where that takes me.
Yeah,
so that's where we are.
Yeah, that's something that I was always, and I think everyone in Austin was always really impressed by, was, you'd be like, hey, let's get together for this rehearsal, or hey, let's go get a beer. I have an idea, of something we could do. And it'd be during the daytime, because obviously we're all playing at night, whether it's with you or on our own projects. And you would have your kids with you, and you were just like, but it was perfect. It was perfect. Like I remember going to like Shady Groves, and we'd be like out there on like the lawn, like in the picnic tables. And like, it was amazing how I can't imagine having kids and trying to conduct a business meeting, because I'm just so whatever. And not to make it sound so corporate, it's like a business meeting. We were just like hanging out, having a day beer. But the way that you would be able to focus on both, and it didn't feel like you were like splitting your attention. And then also the way that both you and your wife were able to both have very kind of what's the word? Very, not pointed's not the word, but very intentional careers. That's the word I'm looking for. Like very intentional careers, and make that balance between the two of you. I'm sure it's not easy, like by any stretch of the imagination, but it was always very inspirational, because we were like, whoa, this guy's like a mover and a shaker. and also like a great dad, like you were like very attentive to them, and you're like, oh yeah, like go do like this or whatever. And you'd be like, oh, like that's a cool rock that you found. Like, can you find another one that looks just like it? Bring it back to me. And they would be like, oh my gosh, okay. And then like go and like, it was just, it was really inspirational. I think it's another thing too, that in the way that you were saying that you like to provide gigs for people, I feel like that in and of itself can sometimes be almost kind of like a paternal skill, because it's this wantingness to provide. And I don't know if you've ever thought about it that way. And this is, I guess, just like a small question or tangent, but do you feel like your like tenacity to book gigs and provide helped like equip you for fatherhood?
That's so funny. I've never thought about it in that respect. But in the same time, it is taking on a responsibility and just owning it completely and like cultivating. So it makes me think about like what's the origin of that. And when I came up, um, I learned so much from mentors, from people who took me under their wing, you know.
Mm,
And I mean, my dad was great at that, but also, and my dad would do that as a matter of fact. My dad actually, because he was a business owner and entrepreneur,
mm,
and like every summer he would bring up all of the cousins, all the boy cousins from St. Louis. Everybody would come up, you know, once they were like teenagers, and they would work in his business. So like
mm-hmm.
he'd have everybody like an assembly line, like doing papers and that kind of stuff, you know. So it was like
Sure.
always this, you know, it was like this teaching of it. And I feel like that's important. That's probably where that sort of like nurturing kind of thing
Mm,
started. But also, I mean, it makes me think about some of like the luminaries in Chicago, Von Freeman,
mm,
Fred Anderson, you know, and these people who, you know, and how much in like, you know, and Wynton Marsalis too, and like, you know, like how like there's this tradition in jazz to like to
mm.
pass it on, you
Right.
know, and you know, because that's how you keep the lexicon developing, and that's how you keep, you know, you have to keep the information alive, and you have to you can't let the information die with you, you know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you can't let it die with you. You have to pass it on somehow, you know, and like and you look for those bright lights that can like go out and illuminate the night, who you know will take that information and change it and look at it in a way, put it through a prism in a different lens in a way that you didn't even think about, and then reflect that information in their own way and like
Mm.
intone that song in their own language, you know, and like and I feel like that's part of the cycle of life, you know, and like that's what um whether we whether we're in tune to that or not, we're part of that cycle of life, you know,
Yeah.
like you talk about that nighttime run, and then
Mm.
you see like there's little mosquitoes under those like those street lights, and like and they're there in the silence, even though you don't notice them.
Yeah.
That's a part of the cycle, you know,
Yeah.
and I think just being in tune with, you know, it's just like we have to contribute to the universe, preferably more good than bad, preferably, you know. Uh, I'm a big believer in like you know you brought up a word toxic, you know, and like
Mm.
in toxicity versus positivity, you know,
Mm.
like it really takes so much less energy to be positive,
Mm.
and it reverberates in your circle and in the world way further than toxicity does.
Mm.
Every single thought, like, you know, if you're driving and somebody cuts you off, you know, when you say asshole, you know, like just even intoning that, even speaking that energy out into the world
Yeah.
messes up your whole thing around you just a little bit. We don't think about it,
Yeah.
but it does. It really does. You know, or if you speak bad about somebody, that sort of messes up the whole thing. It really does. It messes up the energy around you.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, like there's a great line in a song that Big Sean has about energy, and um, it's something about if you're not seeing what you want to see around you, remember that you're a magnet, like your energy is a magnet, like you're reflecting or you're giving out the same thing. Anyway, that's a really heady, long ass
Yeah.
winded answer to your question. So I don't know
No,
where it came from. I just like to,
no, man, that's great.
I like to take care of my homies, man. I like to build a dynasty, whether it's my kids, whether it's my musician friends, and like other
Yeah.
talented people. You got to keep the dynasty going. You got to build the dynasty, build the
Yeah.
empire.
You have this like you hear like what is it, like RBF, but you have like a resting like smile on your face all the time, and like, so you talking about positivity and like I mean, RBF, resting bitch face, right?
Yeah,
uh,
I
uh
hadn't thought about that phrase like the longest time, but yes.
well, I was trying to be subtle
Uh,
and keep it PG, but no, who cares?
yeah,
There's not a rating on this show. No, but anyways,
no.
no, man, like you do always kind of have like a resting smile on your face, and so whenever you're talking about positivity and even just thinking about that, like as small as just saying, asshole when someone cuts you off, because that is the preferred response,
Sure.
and I even had like a moment yesterday, and whenever you're talking about like how much more energy it takes, right? Like something happened yesterday and it was just a small thing, with, I'll even say it was with my brother, and it was a very small thing that we just like, then the conversation kind of took a little bit of a turn, and then we were like, hey, you know what, we're both of our tensions are a little bit high. We wouldn't have done this a few years ago. Let's get off the phone, let's calm down, and then let's call each other back. And then as soon as we got off the phone, we realized it was nothing. It was like absolutely nothing. And then I just went and took a walk. I like walked for like 2 miles, and I was like, oh, like immediately like shoulders down. And like, whereas a couple of years ago I would have taken that negative energy and then I would have gone and played like an aggressive video game, and then like the whole time been like, this asshole disrespected me or whatever, and just like taking that with me. But yeah, it's funny how it's like it takes a whole lot less energy to be positive, but when you are there, when you get negative, it takes
Hmm.
so much energy to just let it go, or at least
Oh
in
yeah.
my opinion. How do you process that, like anytime that you either feel wronged or like peeved about something, like what kind of goes through your mind to let that roll off your shoulder, or do you not even think about it? You're like, you know what, not worth my time, boom, let's move on.
It takes a lot to get to me. Somebody has to really try to get under my skin, because I just like to think of myself like water, and whatever it is, it can just pass through me, or like glass, it'll just bounce off,
Right.
reflect, and I just reflect it back. But I just remind myself that if somebody is being a sort of way towards me that I don't think I deserved or did anything to deserve, that it's not about me, it's about them,
Hmm.
and it's about what they're going through, and it's about something that happened to them or that is happening to them
Hmm.
that has nothing to do with me. It's
Yeah.
just how they chose to respond to a certain situation. But I'm not the real source
Hmm.
of whatever it is that they're feeling. That's something else
Yeah.
that's up to them to deal with. And maybe they don't want to deal with it. Maybe they won't deal with it. That's up
Mhm.
to them. It doesn't matter to me if they do or don't deal with it ever in their life. That doesn't matter to me because
Mm.
I'm not really that. Uh, that's not my position to say. We're
Yeah.
all our own individual people. But no, I am fully aware that if someone is like that, or if someone has had a problem with me,
Mm.
it probably has nothing to do with me. And if it
Yeah.
does have something to do with me, if I am the source, then it occurs. Then I also understand, like, okay, maybe I don't, you know, not that like there's something in myself I need to look at. I know where my shadows are. I
Mhm.
know what areas those shadows exist in.
Yeah.
And I know when my shadow comes out, when I don't have my eye on it and manifests itself in a way that not purposely, but I can cause an offense to someone else.
Mhm.
I know those areas. Those things are always there. We
Yeah.
all have those. We have to manage those within ourselves. As long as you keep your shadow in front of you, you know where those dark spots are. Those dark spots are. You're not going to do any injustice or wrong, but those things, and I know those things are like that I need to always work on
Mm-hmm.
and stay, that can also cause injury or offense to somebody else. So I'm really careful about those. I'm careful about those parts of myself that I know are the dark parts,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody has them, because if there's light, there's also dark. It
Yeah.
has to exist together. You
Yeah.
can't get out of that. But if somebody is just being a jerk to me, that has nothing to do with me. They can just go and keep on going.
Yeah.
And I'll keep on going my way. And perhaps our paths will intersect again, and they will be in a different position, and I don't necessarily need someone to apologize or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, I just keep on moving, man. Life
Mm-hmm.
is too short to get hung up on small shit. I
Yeah.
just keep on moving.
Yeah. David Young, after all these years, you're still teaching me things, man. I'm feeling like convicted, like in
Boom,
a righteous, healthy way
boom.
right now. Boom.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Man. So kind of,
I got a lemon tree back here. How nice is that?
dude,
What a blessing.
I see it, man. I see it. I was
Bite
like,
into that thing.
you, you got the best background of anybody that's been on the show. Don't tell Utah Hammock that.
Hey, if you think
No.
the background is good, you see the foreground, baby. That's not too shabby either.
Okay. All right. Well, as soon as we all get our shots, then, you'll just hear a knock on your door and you'll be like, Christian, I didn't invite you over. I was like, hey, I came for that lemon tree. Like, come on, let me in. Just let me in the back.
Bring it, Daddy-o. Bring it.
Well, hey, man, I wanted to kind of all of the things that you're talking about. And I mean, it's always been evident that you're very like thoughtful, very, again, like to use the word intentional, but it just seems so fitting. Person, I am curious about how that makes its way into your musical projects. A quick side note: one person that you named in the Chicago scene, and I would love to hear about what that process was like for you coming up. Because I mean, you said, instead of going fishing and camping, we were going around and listening to the new Grover Washington record or going and checking out jazz clubs. And to me, I mean, like, I'm not like a super outdoorsy person. That timeline sounds like I want that. I want that for my childhood. Like I want that for my children's, childhood or whatever. But of course, wouldn't inflict any jazz that they were like, what is this crap, Dad? Like we don't want to listen.
That's right.
But in that way, one of the names that you named as being kind of a pillar that we know of the Chicago scene is like Von Freeman. Did you have a relationship with Von Freeman?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Von is okay. So Von is, for anybody who doesn't know, the Freeman brothers, Von Freeman and George Freeman. George Freeman is still alive. Von has passed, and he's gone on to glory. George is still playing. He's still kicking. I mean, as of the time we're recording this, I don't know. George is in his 90s, I think, and he's still out playing. Tremendous guitarist.
Wow.
So his brother Von Freeman. Huge, like a colossus of the tenor saxophone.
Yeah.
And while he's not a household name, like Sonny Rollins or Hank Mobley, but then again, in whose house are they sitting around talking about Hank Mobley right now? This is 2021. Things have changed a little bit, but still, Von's like his like mentorship and his playing touched so many people. Von is like, he was just like, when you're around Von, it's like you're around family. He was like, he had a long standing jam session at the new apartment lounge. And that's where I met him. That's in his much later career. I mean, I didn't meet Von until he was in his 70s, probably.
Sure.
Like a lot of people, like a lot of young jazz people. But he had a standing Tuesday night jam session there, and all the cats would go there and play, and you can go over and spend some time with Von and talk to him, and and he would just take everybody under his wing. He'd talk to you like you're his son or something, like just a loving guy. You never heard Von say anything. I never saw Von be negative one time. I never saw Von complain about a gig. I never saw Von I never heard that negativity from him. Like going back to that negativity thing that now I'm starting it's funny you're asking these great questions, Christian. You're making all these things click. That I'm starting to see all of these like the symbiosis that I didn't necessarily take note of before, because there's also, a guitarist here in Los Angeles, very similar spirit to Vaughn, named Jacques Pleasure.
Mm.
And Jacques is huge. He's amazing, but his energy is the best. His energy is the best. He has a great session that, cats are welcome to come into and sit and play. And like, he's a great mentor.
Mm.
But one of the first things he said to me, well, it was after the session, and it was funny. I came here. I wasn't even intending to play. I just happened to have my horn with me, and I had like some really like I was hanging with my buddy. I hadn't seen him in the longest time. And I think I was just visiting from here. But anyway, I was in like, I'm in California.
Mm.
California's not Texas. And, and like, in California, that's, it is not illegal to be in altered states, so a good friend of mine is a great purveyor and connoisseur of it. And like, I'm like, it's like not all, but anyway, so I played particularly badly this one day.
Oh, no.
I was at the session. I mean, I maybe no one else noticed it, but I just bombed, it was funny. And then like afterwards we were all hanging out, and Jacques, we all like had a shot of I don't know, tequila, I think, with Jacques afterwards. And he's like, just like, he's holding court and like just talking to all the young cats, and like,
yeah.
And he said, and his toast was, remember, fellas, it's never about you. It's only about the music.
Mm.
And everyone's like, yeah. He's like, no, remember, it's never about you. It's only about the music. And then I was like, oh. So that sort of same thing that Jacques talked about is what Vaughn Freeman really embodied. And no, I mean, it was such an honor, like, and you don't realize how quickly those elders go away, the elder tribesmen, the griots. And so I think it's important to have respect for those elders. And like Vaughn was one of those people who commanded that respect, not by being a jerk on the bandstand, but because it was never about him. It was about the music.
Yeah.
And it was about passing that music on to those who wanted to hear, wanted to learn. And one of like my greatest, like my most fond memory of working with Vaughn is when I got this commission to write a suite for the Chicago Humanities Festival one year. I think it was 2002. And I had Vaughn join my band for this thing, and like the feature of it, like, or there was one movement called there's I think it's the Rex Stewart autobiography, Boy Meets Horn, and like the Boy Meets Horn, I feel like there's a lot of different connotations or a lot of different things like with that subject or that title. But Vaughn, Chicago's very Polish. There's a lot of Polish culture in Chicago. It is the second largest, like, at least as of then, like the second largest like group of like Polish citizens outside, I don't know, of Warsaw or Krakow, but like anyway, it's a huge Polish, and everything in Polish, like it's sort of not everything, but it ends with ski,
Yeah.
SKY. So Vaughn he sort of like took that ski, like he put ski in everything, like it was his own like slang that of talking, like his so people call him Vansky. And so I wrote, as part of the suite, a piece called Vansky Meets Hornsky.
Oh my gosh.
And and it was, honestly, it was just a great song. It was so simple. It was such a simple song, and I wanted to make it simple just so that he could have his voice on it. And it was just one of my most favorite songs I've ever written. And that, like, having Vaughn play on that was huge. About 2 years ago, I'd actually written an email to the Humanities Festival to ask them if they happen to have a recording of that, because I don't have a recording. I know it was documented somewhere, but I didn't really receive a response. So CHF, if you guys are listening, try to get me that recording at Vonsky Meets Hornsky
Right.
2002. But anyway, that was a great piece.
Man,
And I love Von.
yeah, that's really exciting, and certainly not to just pivot on to the guy who I look up to and admire a lot. I mean, and I owe a lot to you for hooking me up with Clark Summers and
Mm-hmm.
by proxy, I guess, like Kurt as well. But like, there's a lot of things. The more that I look into, like you said, the elders and treasuring the elders. Like I look into Mark Murphy and John Hendricks and Von Freeman and like all these people. And even the thing of, you said that there's a big Polish
That's crazy. You
presence
know Mark
and
Murphy too? Uptown
yeah,
Poetry Slam. That's crazy, dude.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, well, that was like another person that, is kind of in the lineage of who Kurt was taking after. Right. And
Yeah,
it, I think it's important to, not only check out the people who you like, but check out who they like and see how much has like passed down. I also think it makes the music a lot more approachable because, like when I listen, and I mean, I'm always listening to Kurt, but especially at the beginning, I was so intimidated, and don't get me wrong, I still am, but or not intimidated, but just, I should say, I'm in awe. Intimidation implies a certain amount of not worthiness, but I'm just always inspired and in awe of his ability. And the more that I check out the people who he was checking out, the more that I see these kind of passing downs, like kind of like carrying on the mantle, handing off the baton thing, where it makes it feel like, oh, this person isn't, and this is no disrespect to anybody who takes stuff down, but like very few people are just this one hub of like, oh, and they came up with all this stuff and they were the great innovator and like I'll never measure up to this person. It is all about this whole thing of like, take the things that inspire you, take the things that you like, take the things that you find to be inspiring, and it's burdened on you to carry on that tradition. And then I just think it makes it more approachable when listening to those people to hear that the entire weight of the musical creative world is not on your shoulders, and that you can realize other people's accomplishments and make it fit into whatever you want to do, to where you're not a copycat, but you're just carrying on the lineage and trying
that's
to
right.
trying to be in that family tree, so to speak. Not to impose upon that family tree, but see if you can contribute something that is worthy of maybe being considered a fourth cousin 4 times removed or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, yeah, one of the things, all of that, a very long way to say, like, I've noticed a lot in some of the recordings that Kurt will say what skis and stuff like that, and put like ski on the end. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's another connection where he like maybe inherited that from Vaughn, because I know Vaughn was his guy, and
That's right.
even did vocalies on the first Kurt record that I was introduced to was from, I think, you and James Robinson
Mm-hmm.
at a gig we were playing in San Antonio with some oversized lab coat white tuxedo jackets.
Oh yeah,
You remember that?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And
was Rosanna. It was the Leaper wedding. Yeah, I remember
yeah,
them. Great family too.
man, yeah. So we were playing that gig, and in between sets, like James and you were like, man, I think you really dig on this singer, this cat from Chicago. And I was like, okay, because like both you and James like were from Chicago, so I was like, all right. And I remember just listening to Leaving Again / in the wee small hours in the morning, and it just
James
like,
from Memphis. He's from Memphis.
oh, okay, but wasn't
Mm-hmm.
he in Chicago at one point?
I would bring him to Chicago when we
Okay,
would do sessions and stuff, and then
gotcha.
we recorded that record Silverback in Chicago. So we came to Chicago for that.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. Well, jumping off that onto records, man, I do want to ask you about Appassionata, and Silverback for that matter too. But you start, well, you don't start Appassionata with a ballad, but it's the second tune, right? And When I Knew Emily, which you and I have talked about, to death. But like, give me an idea of like what was going through your mind making Appassionata, and if there was like a subliminal underlying like narrative that guided all of those tunes. Because I know you said that When I Knew Emily had a very special place in your heart, and because that's a very special person in your life, or at least at one point was. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was there kind of like an underlying like through narrative for that record?
Well, I mean, I was really young when I wrote it. I was like 19, but I was like I had been playing all those songs, So I mean, I'd been, a band leader already for like for like years, when I was
Okay.
at young, so I was playing in clubs and stuff with my band. I was also in college. Um, and um, all those songs are like situational, basically.
Hmm.
I wrote almost everything about a situation or a person. Um, uh, I would just try to. Um, okay, I'm going to go on a little tangent. It reminds
Please.
me of Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington in the so Duke Ellington in the introduction to the album Afro-Eurasian Eclipse. He preempts a tenor saxophone feature by the tenor saxophonist Harold Ashby, who was part of his band at the time, and the whole suite deals with um, Asian, Australian culture, like Far Eastern. It's not the Far East suite, but anyway, it's this very like primal kind of a thing. And Duke Ellington talks in this really hilarious sort of like, floral. It's not hilarious, but like his talking is very ebullient and floral. And he says, and we have inducted Mr. Harold Ashby into, I hate to say, in to possibly scrape off a tiny bit of the charisma of his chinoiserie immediately after our piano player has completed his riki tiki. And he's like goes, but anyway, I was trying to scrape off some of the chinoiserie of like different people. So like Abu, that song on there, Abu, it's like that's my brother's nickname. I would always call him Abu when I was a kid, my older brother. So like that song was sort of like inspired by him. Um, there's a song on there called it looks like Glad, Glad,
Hmm.
but it's Glad.
Mm.
Glad was this a pianist who is Glad Tamano, really, really wonderful guy. And he was Filipino. And I don't remember how I first met him. He was just on the scene there.
Mm.
And I feel like he moved out of Chicago some years ago, but he was a part of my band for a while. So he just had a really, really great, great feeling, And so I wrote this song just about, for him, like just the way he was and like the rhythm of him as a person, you know, soft and warm, I mean, like it's like super romantic also, like I would
Mm.
always sit at this, I had this piano room in my apartment, and I had painted the walls maroon, and I'd always like write songs on the piano by candlelight and like with incense burning, you know what I mean? Like
Is
that was
that
such a
is that
weird.
the is that the inspiration for that priceless cover art?
Oh hell yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
I, I remember
With the
the
shirt
cover
and
I was
everything.
wild, yeah.
Oh
uh
man.
Adam, who was the guy who produced the album, he went and like he had gotten this like antique candelabra and like, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's get it, like, and
Yeah.
let's get this shirt, and like I'm gonna open the shirt up. Why not? Let's get it. Let's get it. I mean, so yeah. With all those songs, I think really what I was doing at the time, I was just really like wanting to understand like how to find my own voice as
Mm.
a musician and as a writer, and but also at the same time not be selfish and make it about me, really like try to observe and be an observer and like take notes on the people and the world and situations around me, and then figure out how to make a melody with that,
Hmm.
and then also how to make a great song that can entertain a crowd too, and that can stick in people's head, you
Yeah.
know being largely instrumental, although nearly everything had lyrics to it.
Hmm.
I always heard all those songs with lyrics,
Hmm.
because at that point I would really just try to apply lyrics to everything I played so that it made sense. I knew if it made sense as a sentence, it would make sense to the audience,
Wow.
if that
Yeah.
makes any sense
Oh my God.
to anyone.
That's absolutely I would even go as far as to say profound. Like, yeah, like because you're like, no, no, no. I mean, like that makes a lot of sense because instrumentalists, right? Like a lot of people stress to instrumentalists, they say, okay, yeah, learn the head, learn the changes, learn the lyrics, right? Because like
Yeah.
each person can make a song make sense for them. And, you know, kind of in the same way I was talking about this project I'm working on right now, like there are tunes like, for instance, The Thrill Is Gone. That is one meaning to the songwriter. It's going to work in a completely, I don't know if I'll say completely different, but a completely alternate narrative for the purposes of this upcoming record. So even though like everybody can have their own interpretations and own way of making sense of a melody and a tune, knowing those lyrics and knowing the baseline of the jumping off point is essential, in my opinion, at least. I mean, that's somewhat as a lyricist, right? Like, I think words are important. And I, you know, talking about the negativity thing, to bring that back, it's like there are a lot of songs that I listen to and I get like upset unnecessarily just because I think, oh man, like this wasn't this was a Mad Lib that they, you know, it was like insert adjective here, insert verb here, or whatever. And I shouldn't put a bunch of energy into that. But as a lyricist, I'm really always focused on like, okay, how do I make something accessible to the listener, but it's not just like spoon fed? How am I going to make them think without turning them off by thinking that it's too heady or too on the nose? You know, it's a delicate balance. Have you ever thought about you know, I know there's a whole thing of like not wanting to necessarily revisit old things and always be moving forward, but have you ever thought about going back and doing a re-recording of the album with the lyrics?
Oh, totally. I thought about that 3 days ago.
And oh my God, really? What?
Yeah, I did. I totally did, because I feel like there's something that is so, there's something that was lost in translation by not having the lyrics on there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because especially now, then at the time when I recorded it, not as much, because there were CDs, and the CDs, you opened it up and all the lyrics were in the liner notes.
Right.
There are no more liner notes anymore.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we're in the, you know, it's NFTs and streaming, and like, and it's just all, everything's all digital. So people have no, you know, oh, that's not true. I mean, on Apple Music, you can, you know,
Digital booklet or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that, but you really have to take like a lot of extra steps to get there and access that. Most people are going to be listening to that when they're on the go or in the car or whatever, and nobody's going to be looking at the lyrics. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do that, because I enjoy those lyrics. I mean, some of them, whatever. I mean, the lyrics are what they are. It's like, had I written those lyrics and those songs now, I would have had different lyrics and I would have chosen words differently. But it's a perfect little capsule of time, you know. And but yeah, I would love to record those with the words, man.
Amazing. Well, the difference between the first and second record, I mean, then moving on to Silverback, that's it's like a very different vibe. I mean, this is more like groove, you know, R&B. I don't know if I should even attempt to assign genres to different things, because it is very varied, right? Because I can't remember what the oh gosh, I could look it up. There's one track that I remember I was listening to Silverback all this morning, and I was like, oh yeah, this one's like quite a bit different. It's let's see, I've got it right here. Sorcery, right? That sticks out as kind of like a different kind of side. But then, you know, my favorite, Jack Black Cadillac and Paint the Moon, right? Like just, and then something as sweet and again, like what I interpret to be paternal as Tumbleweed, right? And highlighting your voice on it, it's like, oh, this feels so good. So then was there kind of a conscious decision of where you were like, I don't want to be bound just by the confines of like straight ahead jazz or whatever that means to whoever's, you know, saying it out loud, and were you just like, I just want to do singer-songwriter stuff now and explore that side? Was it one kind of replacing the other, or was it just kind of working in tandem?
Everything. I mean, that's something I'd wrestled with for years. For years I wrestled with that, you know, like when I it's like, how much can, I don't know, for years I wrestled with that, and then I had gotten so many different, you know, like there's so many different schools of thought, and like, you know, and like, and I feel like maybe some of the things that I wrote and some of the tunes that I picked for some people in the jazz community where they weren't, I sort of, I don't know if anyone ever like spoke that to me. Actually, yes, they have on a few different occasions. It's like, well, that's not a jazz tune, or like, you need to play more
Mm.
bebop on your sets, or, and like, but for me, it's like, you know what? I don't know. Like, I hear what I hear,
Mm.
and I have a lot of different influences, and there's a lot of music I like, and if I try to be something I'm not, then I'm not being anything. You
Right.
know, uh, I'm just not being anything. So then, yeah, I had wrestled with that for such a long time, and there was a pretty big gap. There's a 13-year gap between the time that the Passionata and um, Silverback came out. Not to say that I'd like retired. I played on many, many other records and like done all kinds of stuff. But yeah, once Silverback came, I was like, and the first song in there, White Hot Center, I
Mm.
tried to use that to like talk about like the zeitgeist of what it was I was feeling. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's been so long, I've been like stuck, but when it happens, when there's a flame, there's a spark, there's inspiration, just jump
Mm.
into it and don't think about it. And that's the idea of that
Yeah.
song. And yeah, and I was really proud of that album too. I mean, I produced it myself, and like uh as opposed to like looking for a record label to put it out or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I just really have this music in me, and I really need to like get it out, and I don't care what
Yeah.
anybody thinks. I don't care what genre it is. This is just what I want to do right now, and we're gonna do it. And
Yeah.
that's what it became. And I love that project. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard the most recent one I did.
I haven't.
Um,
What is it?
it's called Detroit City. It's my name. It's under a moniker, which is Detroit City,
Okay.
but it's called and a bunch of the cats in Austin played. We recorded it in Austin, but
What?
my like buddy and collaborator Paul Blair, DJ White Shadow from here in Los Angeles, produced it, and it's called The Genesis.
Okay.
It's all instrumental. It's really cool stuff. I like that. I like that record a
Man.
lot. We released 5 of the 10 songs
Okay.
on Quincy Jones's Q&R Music label, which had a partnership with this other company called Rahigu. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it just comes out under Q&R Music. But we released 5, and then we'll release the other 5. We've been talking about a release date and plan for that. But I think you'll like that too. But yeah, Silverback is a great. I mean, I had a lot of fun with that project. A lot of fun
Yeah.
with that project.
Man, amazing. I just found the Genesis. I literally, as soon as we get off, I'm going to listen to it.
Oh, peep that! Turn it up loud too.
Yeah, man. And another thing too, I mean, you had said that over the course of the lockdown that you had been working on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there like a new record that's kind of like on the horizon, so to speak?
Well, yeah, for sure. As a matter of fact, there's one that I want to. One of the last things I recorded in Austin that I still haven't released. I don't know if you know. Have you heard any of those? I think you've heard some of those songs. We had that band that we were playing at Sea Boys. We had a residency at Sea Boys. We
Mm-hmm.
played at the gallery all the time, and I'd written these songs specifically for that. Just like for quartet, just uh, guitar, drum,
Mm-hmm.
bass, and then trumpet vocal.
Okay.
Um, and those songs are great. I just went and listened to that whole record again yesterday, and like I keep kicking myself in the butt that I haven't released it yet because
Oh man.
it just feels good. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really truly rocking. Jordan Birchhill, Anthony Casaro, and
Ben.
then Ben Treach,
Yeah.
and Ben Treach also played on that Genesis project too.
Cool.
That was Ben Francano, um, Maldonado, Dan Beckhold, Mike Malone.
Oh man.
Yeah, everybody was on it. George played on one of the songs. There's a trash truck. It's gonna get loud for like 2
You're fine.
seconds. You can
You're
probably
fine.
hear that from outside. What can I do? Um,
We're present in the moment, man. Every
that's right.
that is beauty in itself.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, I got a little bit off topic there, but
Man,
yeah.
that's
Oh yeah. New music I've been doing recently. Oh yeah, yeah. So I've been yeah. All right. So it's all everything I've been writing right now. I've been really like doing a lot of like collaborative writing with people, with producers, um, and like understanding. I realized that up until recently, so much of my writing process has been solo. It was all by myself,
Hmm.
and you know, which is great because you understand how to find your voice, but also I feel like at a certain point you have to be able to write with other people.
Hmm.
So I've in my time here, the 2 years I've been here, uh, I've been writing a lot with other people, but specifically other like producers and like producing music, like on mm, computers. I was in this just the other day. I was in this amazing studios called Rosen Studios here
Hmm.
in Studio City, and it's all like vintage analog keyboards.
Oh,
Everything's
cool.
everywhere. I mean, lining the wall.
Yeah.
It's like Mecca, like going there.
Yeah.
And there were 9 of us in a room, and we did 25 songs together. But there were 25 song
Whoa.
starters. Yeah, but
Yeah.
we did that to then take these 25 and then all take the individual samples and stems, and then we're going to cut them up, chop them up, and make hip hop music from that.
Cool.
Make or not, but hip hop, pop, whatever. But it's all this raw material. So just that process of creation and
Mm.
writing has been. I've learned a lot doing that, and um, yeah. So I've written a lot of stuff like solo, especially during the first part of the pandemic. We spent 4 months up in Montana
Mm.
at my in-laws ranch up there.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah, so after everybody went to bed, I would go out there. It was cold at first too. It was really cold. But I'd go out there in the barn. It's like a barn, and I would write until like 4 in the morning every
Wow.
night, and yeah, so it's all kinds of, but like head bob. I mean, I don't even know what to call it. It's so early, but yeah, one of the songs I had done, like I did a collab, I did it and I sent it off to another guy to see what he thought about it. And then he's a great producer. He actually just won a Grammy this past year because he was one of the producers on Kanye's album Jesus is King.
Whoa.
Tremendous musician, and just like I'm like in awe of his like musicianship, and his professionalism, his attitude, his vibe. He just like dude is great. Ainer Lopez, he's great. And so yeah, so I had done this thing that I thought was really good, and then he took it and made it like even better, and then like he brought in another guy who made it even better,
Whoa.
and it was great, But that's I feel like the power of working collaboratively in a group, and writing collaboratively, and yeah,
Mm.
and it's like a delicate balance, especially when you're all live in a room together. But yeah, you learn how to do it. So that's a lot of what I've been doing now. What
Man.
of it I have thought of to release as a full, complete body of work of the
Mm.
past year? Probably nothing. I mean, I could. Like, I definitely like listen to it all, but it's like making music just to make music, or
Sure.
making music just to deepen my skills as a music producer, and getting like learning how to use the DAW um, fluidly,
Mm.
and like fluidly in order to create the exact to come up with the sound I want to hear as fast as I can,
Mm.
and not necessarily have to rely on other musicians to do that, uh, because honestly it's not always feasible to like, okay, like, not that it's always feasible, but if every album you make you have to have 12 musicians on, like, just the budget is always going to be a struggle a bit, and like,
Right. Yeah.
and always like if you want, like whatever you can pay for it, or it's like if you want somebody to invest, if you want a record label, they're going to say, okay, what's the return on investment? Like, who's going to listen to your big band jazz album? It's like people are going to ask you that question. It's like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah.
like how many units you're going to sell? You got to have a plan for that these days,
Hmm.
and yeah, you have to make those dollars and cents work. So um, a little bit of that is what I think started why. I mean, I would always demo songs in like Logic or something
Hmm.
like that. I would always demo songs, and um, so I could hear them, and I could also play them for musicians, when we were going to go and record a project, you know. Um, but then how to really like perfect it, and like how to use a DAW,
Mm.
or how to use production techniques, studio skills to truly make something perfect and make it
Mm.
sound like the way you want it to sound like. That's a whole nother thing, and I realized I had to deepen that skill. So
Yeah.
that's something I'm just constantly doing.
Yeah, man, it's so exciting to hear about it because I just feel like you're constantly like, it's like the healthy version of like when someone's not satisfied and they're constantly searching for new sounds. It's like the
Hmm.
opposite of like, and maybe you feel that to a certain extent, but it just feels like you don't ever want to be limited creatively by any convention or anything that it's like, okay, now I'm in this genre or now I'm in this. You're just like, no, let's just make music. And this whole thing of like, I made a ton of stuff, but I don't want to be but I made a ton of stuff, but I don't know if it works as like one whole body of work yet. And I think that's almost more freeing and more mature than a lot of musicians do, where we're just like, yeah, all right, we got to focus on what the next record's going to be. And we need to put it out within the next 2 years. So we have something, coming out every like year and a half, 2 years. But this kind of contentment of being like, no, I'm just gonna try to make sounds. I'm just gonna try to make stuff that works. And then once it works and I go, oh, this is cohesive, then we release
Right.
that.
That's
So
right.
much more organic than trying to like create something in a vacuum. Um, wow.
I guess so. I mean, I read this quote. I was something on the internet or something floating around, but it said, "Never be afraid to suck at something new." And I really
Mm,
like that. I really like that, because
it's
I've
vulnerable.
been like, yeah, I've been like, just be vulnerable and like, and be comfortable with that vulnerability. I've been like really good at one thing, and then like I would go to something else that I kind of sucked at, and
Mm,
people are like, "Hey, why are you doing that? You suck at this." I'm like, "No, I don't suck at this.
mm,
I'm just not a master of it
yeah.
yet."
Right.
But if I keep on doing, it's like whatever, just keep on doing it. I remember like when I released Silverback, one of the criticisms, so with the Passionado, it's like, okay, well, I wanted to do vocals, but
Mm,
the guy who produced the record at the time, it's like, no, you can't really sing. Nobody wants to hear you sing. I'm like, whatever, I like to sing. I'm a singer, right?
yeah.
And but when I did silver and when I did Silverback, and then we'd actually funny, we did a follow-up record, with the same label. After that, I worked on the thing, and it was just like, and I was like, it was just too far left of center for the
Mm,
for the label. They didn't really like it, so that was never
interesting.
released. Although there were some great songs on there, great songs, but it's too far left of center for them. They didn't want that experiment, which is understandable. I understand that. It's my journey, not theirs. But with
Yeah.
Silverback, I released that, and I was like, all right, I love this project. And then everyone said, you know what, the record's cool, but there's not enough trumpet. I'm like, well,
Mm,
you know what? Oh, I guess I can't make everybody happy with one thing. So it doesn't really matter how it hits people or what their expectations is. Again, it
mhm.
goes back to that thing. It's like, it's about them. It's not about me. It's like, okay, yes, me as a trumpet player, they want to hear me play there's trumpet on the thing, but it's just the right amount of trumpet that I wanted on it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not enough trumpet solos on there. I'm like, well, if you want to hear solo, just come see me play live and you'll hear me play
Yeah.
nothing but solos. But in the meantime, that's a body of work and that is what it is. And so I think like do it and be, it's like manifest destiny and create the thing that you want to create. Don't be afraid to suck at something new and just be fiercely creative. And also, just I think like stay humble and just listen to your inner voice. You have to
Mm,
listen to the inner voice because if you turn that off, then you're not going to be, you're not really going to be saying anything if you turn that inner voice off.
mm, yeah.
Doesn't matter what people think, it doesn't
It
matter.
it's funny that you said humble at the exact moment I was like being like, oh yeah, the word humility. And I thought humility. And then like split second later, you were like humble because it almost feels like in a sense that because you are like a really amazing producer and also a really amazing songwriter and also a really amazing performer, singer, trumpet player, whatever, dad, like mentor, all these things. And it almost felt like when you were saying that Silverback was kind of this almost like transition project where it was like, I don't need to be in the spotlight all the time, where it was almost like, now I'm going to transition more into a writing and producing role. I'm not hanging up the performing thing, but I don't need to be front and center. I just want to be the person putting the puzzle pieces together, where I'm putting the right people in the right space to make the music that I want to create. And if I play a part in that, great. If I don't, who cares, because it's still realizing my thing. It just doesn't
Correct.
maybe necessarily have me front and center all the time. And that's something that, I mean, band leader, frontman, singer, trumpet player, arguably the four easiest professions where someone can have a really heavy ego, right? You
Sure.
know,
Oh my God. Yeah.
and yet you have kind of found a nice little detour around all of those, like moral or whatever pitfalls, you know, and found this really like nice balance. So that's beautiful. That's so beautiful to hear.
Slippery fish.
Yeah.
Slippery fish. I am.
Right. Yeah. Well, David, man, I could talk to you forever, but I want to be respectful of your time. You are a father, you got kids to attend to, and I,
We're going on a camping trip today. Actually, it's funny.
oh yeah,
I've got I got a pile of sleeping bags over there, a tent. We're gonna go camping up in Big Sur. I'm gonna do some fishing. It's gonna be
amazing.
fun.
Amazing. The only Big Sur that I have is my OS on my Mac. So like, I'm jealous, you know? Uh, anyways, the last question that, well, actually, let me ask two quick questions. The first one is, what's a record you would suggest everyone go listen to right now? It could be any genre, could be of any time period. What's something that you just think is required listening?
Mm, I'd say Marvin Gaye, the soundtrack to the movie Trouble Man.
Mm, fantastic. Great. I'm going to go listen to it right after. Well, I'm going to listen to Detroit City first, the
Yeah,
Genesis.
check that out.
And then I'm
Check
going to
that
go
out.
listen to Trouble Man. And the other thing is, and ooh, this one's exciting to ask you, because you and I, I'm sure, have had several of these. I was in the
I'm
show with
nervous.
asking, yeah, right, you should be. No, I was in the show with asking, we all have gigs from hell where things go totally sideways. Can you think of an exceptional gig from hell that you were just like, what the hell's going on?
All right, I'm gonna go back way, 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 way back, and it's
Okay.
way back. But it has a happy ending. I was 12 years old,
Mm,
and this pastor had me play at his church. I can't remember what the service was for, but he invited me to come play at the church. His name
mm,
was Heisel Taylor, Pastor Taylor,
okay.
and like, he's like, he wasn't like your friendly, like, oh, like, I mean, no, he was a wonderful pastor, but
Mm,
also you kind of had the sense of like, if he wanted to get, like, he could kick somebody's ass.
yeah.
Like he was a big dude, like strong dude, you know. It's like, and it was a Baptist church, and so I went and played at this church, Pastor Taylor's church, and I can't remember the song I had to play. I think it was Holy, Holy, Holy.
Okay.
Doing it as a trumpet solo.
Mm,
It was me, and then Sister Gwen Edmonds was playing the
mm,
piano. And all right, so okay, I'm gonna wait for this truck to go by. All
okay.
right, so I didn't really. I mean, I had started when I was 11,
Mm,
and like I had this, like, I was using the school horn. It was crappy,
yeah.
and it was one of my earliest memories of like playing outside of this, because I played in church band growing up, but like I played like outside of school. I wasn't in band or whatever. It was
Mhm.
just me. It was just me. And it wasn't even the church that I went to. It was another
Yeah.
church in my hometown, Evanston, but it wasn't like my church. So everyone, like, they didn't know me.
Yeah.
They didn't know me. They just heard I was a good trumpet player. Dude, this trash truck is gonna come right now.
Okay.
How loud is that right now? Can I
That's
talk
fine.
over it or no?
You're fine.
All
Do
right.
your thing.
So anyway, I'll cut to the chase. I'm in the middle. No, I'm not even in the middle. I'm at the beginning of this song, and my vowels get stuck.
Oh no.
So it's like, holy, holy, I try to go through a little bit, and then like, so I just have to stop altogether, because
Yeah.
then, like, it was stuck. It wouldn't even come up. It
Yeah.
wouldn't come up anymore. And then, like, so so then like I was sort of like sheepishly, I have to like walk over to my trumpet case and some of the old ladies, they're like, "That's all right, young man. That's all right."
my
So
God.
I get a few pity claps, right? I get a few pity claps. And then Pastor Taylor, he's just sitting there. I think he has like a diamond pinky ring. He's just sitting there looking at me like this on the side from the pulpit. And he doesn't say anything. And then I come back up and I oil the valve. And it takes me forever because like my hands are shaking and whatnot.
Oh no.
And Sister Gwen is waiting for me to start the song again. And
is she even like noodling and playing some stuff, or is it silent?
Radio silence.
Oh,
radio silence in the whole church. All right, so I get back and I'm ready to play again. And then so she plays a little intro, and then I'm playing. I go to blow, but like it's just resistance. Nothing comes out. I realized I was so nervous. I put the valves in backwards.
Yep. Oh no.
So that didn't work out so well. So then I have to stop. I have to like take it again, like take it apart again. I finally figured out. I finally get through the song. I crack some notes, and like my hand is like this, so like the vibrato is wild. And then Pastor Taylor gets up. He's like, well, little David Young, you're gonna need to keep on practicing. Oh, that sure was interesting. But anyway, it was like, I mean, he wasn't like trying to like placate or anything. Like he let me have it, dude. He totally let me have it.
No, man.
And that was funny. So that's a story I'll give. I could definitely tell other stories, but I remember that story very vividly because it was so early. It was my first epic gig bomb. And so that was a huge gig bomb for me.
Woo! That's like whenever you're like
that?
It's like you're asking for forgiveness every second of the performance. You're just like, if there was a place that you could have been performing that forgiveness needed to be afforded, that was the one.
That's right. But I'll tell you, all the elder women in the church, they came over, and like just the people, like and the guys, like the deacons, they're like, "Yeah, that was good, young man. That was good, little David. Keep blowing that horn. Keep blowing that horn."
And here you are. Chicago, Austin, LA, still blowing that horn.
Also New York in there too. I was in New York for a few years too, but here I'm still doing it. Can you believe it?
Fantastic.
It didn't discourage me.
Man, David, I love you so much, man. It was so good to catch up.
You,
we need to make sure it's not too long before the next time, and I'll hopefully see you soon. I mean, I got both my shots, and so we're good to go. So hopefully sometime in 2021 we'll link up.
My man. Sounds good. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks, D Young. Talk to you soon, man.
Be well, brother.